Hi, it's Paul Elliott here. So I've got a concept I want to share with you, an idea I want to share with you, which based on my experience of the people this has been shared with so far, this will completely change the way you think about money, will completely change the way you think or approach how you achieve a level of financial security, financial freedom. And also, if we look at this in terms of how do you get to a place where you retire? Now, like retirement might not be a very sexy word. It might not be something that you personally are thinking about on a regular basis. Or it may be that you're at that stage in your life where retirement is becoming more of an important idea, more of an important concept, and you're really thinking, how am I ever going to get to a place where I can retire? So I want to share with you one fundamental idea, and this will completely change the way you think about money, you think about wealth, you think about financial security, guaranteed. So stay with me on this. Now, I've got a few slides in front of me, so you may see me kind of looking down and looking at those slides occasionally. That's because keep my eyes fixed on one camera lens like drives you crazy after a while, and I do want to keep looking at my slides. Slides keep me on track. They make sure I don't go off on tangents. So bear with me on that. If you see my eyes move, I'm just looking at a couple of slides. So stay with me. So here's what we want to do. We want to answer the question, how much do you need to retire, to be able to retire? You know, retirement's a major issue at the moment. Politically, it's a huge issue around the Western world because the majority of people who are approaching retirement age do not have enough money to be able to retire. Major issue. But for you personally, what can you do differently? See, fundamentally, before I get into this, the one thing I am going to say is, of course, you want to take responsibility for this. You personally. No one else is going to do it for you. The government's not going to do it for you. Someone else is not going to do it for you. You need to personally take responsibility for this. So, first off, let me define what I mean by retirement. Retirement for me is not about watching every penny. It's not about scrimping and saving. It's not about thinking, can I afford to switch the heating on in winter? None of those things. Retirement for me really means having more freedom, certainly more time freedom. It means being able to have choices and not be restricted by any lack of finances whatsoever. It means being able to invest in experiences. It means being able to maybe enhance my lifestyle, not downsize my lifestyle. Does that make sense? So I don't know what your definition of retirement is, but I'm going to work towards that definition. And that's what I want to share with you, because the concepts I want to share with you will allow you to achieve that kind of lifestyle. So you should be in a place where when you retire, more time freedom, more money, and more lifestyle. In fact, more of everything, more choice. That's really what it's ultimately about. You know, retirement used to be called the golden years. You know, it was a time when all of a sudden you weren't having to get up in the morning and go to work and do the commute and then do it again in the evening. The idea was that stopped, and all of a sudden you had more time freedom. So you should have that. Like retirement by definition must mean that you have more time freedom. It should allow you the freedom time-wise and financially to be able to invest in more experiences for yourself, for your family, for your friends. You know, I know there's plenty of research out there to show this, but people who invest in experiences are happier and more fulfilled than people who just invest in material things. And I think that's kind of obvious. You know, I remember when I took my children to Disney World for the first time. I mean, as a family experience, absolutely incredible. The children loved it. They still talk about it to this day. And obviously they just want to go back. You know, so it's like, it's an experience. It's a memory. It's something that you will treasure and cherish forever. So that's really what retirement should be. But retirement is no fun if you're broke. And I think that's kind of obvious. You know, who wants to spend their retirement downsizing their lifestyle or downgrading their lifestyle or worrying about every penny they're spending and worrying about whether they can afford to do that or afford to go anywhere? Because that's really a path to, it's kind of really a path to just being depressed, lonely, and bored. And I don't think that's what anybody wants. We want to be more fulfilled, more happy, because I think, you know, the older we get, hopefully the wiser we get, we should have something to be able to give back. So I want you to also start thinking about what it is you would like to do when you retire. I'm going to give you my definition. When I retire, I actually want to be able to continue writing books. I want to continue giving seminars and sharing ideas with people, ideas that can transform lives. And I'd also like to be able to give back on another level where I help the next generation of entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs coming through, and help them in some way, maybe help them solve some of the bigger problems that we're facing as a society and as a world. That's what I want to do with my retirement. So I don't know what you want to do. You need to decide that for yourself. But whatever it is that you want to do in retirement, the question then is, how are you able to do that? What do you need to put in place that will allow you to do that? And that's what I want to share with you right now. All right, so first thing, you need to change the way you think about money. You need to change the way you think about wealth. See, all of your results in life, designed or otherwise, come about because of the actions you take. The actions you take are obviously massively influenced by the decisions that you make. So Tony Robbins has this great quote, in your moment of decision, your destiny is shaped. And that's very true. Your decisions shape your destiny because your decisions shape your actions, and your actions therefore determine the results you're going to get. So what influences your decisions is your knowledge base, is your understanding. So if you have one understanding of money and understanding of wealth, then that will shape the decisions you make. And that may take you down a path that you don't want to go down. You know, like what you don't know can cause you a lot of pain. So here's a concept I want you to get your head around. This will change the way you think about money. And my outcome is that it does change the way you think about money. You have, and please write this down, you have a wealth pie. You can see an image of that. Think of it as a pie, and the pie is divided into 3 pieces. The first piece is your personal asset. So this is an asset pie, 3 types of assets. So your first asset is a personal asset. And personal assets are things like your home, your car, your TV, your furniture, things that you've bought which add up, they have a certain value. And they're things you've bought to enhance your quality of life or to give you a feeling, a sense of security. Those are personal assets. Second type of asset is equity assets. So, you know, the concept of equity, so if you've bought a home and it's gone up in value since you bought it, so it's worth more than you paid for it, then of course there's a level of equity built into it. In other words, there's potential wealth built into the property. So if you were to be able to release that in some way, then of course you'd be able to actually spend it and use it. So that's equity. And typically with equity, of course, you buy an equity asset with a view to what it's going to give to you at some point in the future. You don't tend to buy equity assets for the immediate return today. You look at them for something that they're going to do for you in the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Maybe as a nest egg. And typically you buy them with some form of leverage, but that's by the by. So an equity asset. Third one is an income asset. An income asset is exactly what it says. It generates an income for you, cash flow for you on a regular basis. And here's the important thing. It does so without you actively working for it. So in other words, if you have a salary, you go into work. You actively exchange your time for money. So you're actively working. An income asset, though, generates an income for you passively or with minimal input from you. And that's really where you want to get to. Now, let's put this in context. Let's take someone who makes a great salary. So let's say, for example, somebody makes a good 6 figures a year, so $100,000 a year or more. And you go, that's a great salary. And it is. So if we were to then look at their wealth pie and break it down, what do you think would be the proportion between the different types of assets, and how big would their overall pie be? So we can assume if they're on $100,000 a year, that they certainly have a home, so they bought a home. They have a car, at least one car. They have furniture, they have a TV, a fridge, the usual stuff. And we can add all of that up and we put that in their wealth pie. And then you might say, okay, well, what about equity assets? We'll say, okay, well, we know they've got a home, so maybe there's some equity in that property. So we go, okay, there's a proportion of equity in there. So if we were to look at the pie and say, okay, well, how much of that pie do you think is taken up by their personal assets? 10% of their pie, 20% of their pie, 50% of their pie, 60, 70, 80%? Probably 90% of their pie is taken up by their personal assets. Their equity assets might add another anywhere between, well, could take up the final 10%. Because the real question you want to be looking at is, how much income assets do they have? And what proportion of their wealth pie is made up of income assets? So someone on a great salary, and that's all they've got, a great salary, has personal assets, potentially has equity assets, but has 0 income assets. How secure is their pie? How vulnerable is their pie? Obviously very vulnerable. In other words, if their job stopped today, how long could they maintain their lifestyle? If they wanted to retire tomorrow, how long could they afford to retire for? Probably not very long. A couple of weeks, maybe a month. That's it. That's not the goal. You want to be focused, and you want all your decisions to move you towards a very different looking wealth pie. This wealth pie, where at least 50%, so you can see the difference here straight away, at least 50% of your wealth pie is taken up by your income assets. And then let's say 25% of your wealth pie is your personal assets. And I'm not suggesting you get rid of any of your personal assets, you keep them, you might even add to them. But you're able to add to them because you're massively adding to your income assets. Does that make sense? And then of course maybe 25% is your equity assets. But the biggest piece of your pie, proportionally, and we might look, the pie might be growing. If you're adding to your income assets, you're possibly adding to your equity assets at the same time. So the actual overall value of your pie is massively growing. It's a bigger and bigger pie. You're baking a bigger pie. But the proportionally, you want to be focused on how, and the question you want to be asking is, how do you get to a place where 50% of your wealth pie, at least 50%, is income assets? If you have 50% in income assets, 25% in personal assets, 25% in equity assets, how strong is your wealth pie? How secure is your wealth pie? If your job stopped tomorrow, could you afford to stop working? Yes. If you wanted to retire tomorrow, could you afford to retire? Yes. How long could you retire for? Indefinitely. You know, if there's a breakthrough in medical science tomorrow, and all of a sudden you and I are immortal, this pie will still support you forever. Does that make sense? That's the key I want to get across here. This is the goal. This is where you want to get to. Take a look at the two wealth pies side by side. You can see someone with a great salary but no income assets, that's a very vulnerable wealth pie. That's financial slavery, in my opinion. But on the other side, somebody with a great wealth pie, where they're focused on building their income assets to get to that place where at least half the wealth pie is income assets, that's freedom. That's retirement. Does that make sense? See, retirement is not a number. Retirement is a wealth pie. This kind of wealth pie. So now you want to be thinking about, okay, how do I use this? Well, you use this to change the way you make decisions. Everything you look at, everything you're thinking about in terms of money, should be thinking about, how do I use this to move me to this kind of wealth pie? A retirement wealth pie, a solid wealth pie, a strong wealth pie, or in taste terms, the best tasting wealth pie because it has more income assets. Income assets taste nicer than personal assets and equity assets, guaranteed. So how do you bake the best retirement wealth pie for you? That's the question you want to be asking. And we'll talk about, maybe in a future video, we'll talk about how you actually start building income assets. But I want you to get that goal in your head. I want you to kind of almost like brand it, burn it into your brain. You know, like take a snapshot of it with your unconscious mind so it's burnt in there at a deep level. That's where you want to be heading for. That's the goal. You know, if you don't know the goal, how can you possibly ever hit it? That's the goal. This kind of wealth pie, this is what you want to be focused on. I hope this has been useful. I hope this concept transforms your decisions you make financially and helps you understand that retirement is not a number, it's a wealth pie. Hopefully see you soon and certainly talk to you in the next video.